this third episode of a complete web workflow from beginning to end, I'll show you how I normally set up my files and the directory structure so that it's nice and easy to use and we know what we're working with from the beginning really. So I got the site design open in Photoshop. It's definitely not the best design in the world, but I think it's basic enough to do a video series on, but at the same time there's enough little things that we can concentrate on, like web fonts and the way we can use HTML5 and make it responsive. So it's kind of a nice balance between basic and using some new technologies at the same time. So I've actually just got it saved as a flat file in Photoshop. It's something I've been doing lately because so many people just kind of have Photoshop files and then just export them as images, too often, and then you basically got a website made of images, whereas so much you can do nowadays with CSS. There's really no reason to use images too much. They're large, they take up a lot of bandwidth, so where possible I use CSS nowadays. So for the actual file setup, I've already dragged my project file into Sublime Text here. So I got it on the left, you just drag it onto the icon down here and you got it open. All that's in here at the moment is the actual PNG of the site design. So if you followed the episode earlier, you'll see that I use a package in Sublime called Advanced New File. So that's really the benefit of this, is you can create files and folders very quickly. So if you press Command Alt and N at the bottom here, you can see I've got an enter a path for a new file. So for this website, even though I just mentioned I'm going to try and stay away from images, obviously we're going to have images of some sort for my logo, for example. So after pressing that Command Alt and N in this bottom bit here, I know that I'm going to want a directory called image. So just type that in, img / press enter, and on the left up here I've got an empty image directory. Of course you can do that in Finder, right click, new folder, type it in, and then you've got it there. But I find it actually quicker now if you get into the flow of it, pressing Command Alt N, type in the thing. So what else are we going to want? We're probably going to want a CSS directory, so CSS /. We're going to want a SAS directory, so SAS /. What else? Probably a JS / directory. So that's our 4 empty folders ready to put items in now. Of course then, we'll actually want our home website, which will be index.html. So now we got a nice basic empty index file. So for the actual CSS and SAS of the project, we're going to be using a little framework and grid kind of structure that I've built up over the last couple of years. It's built on the Skeleton framework, which is a great starting point. It's just getskeleton.com if you want to try out their basic version, but I kind of adapted it to be a SAS version with variables and the kind of way that I think is best for websites nowadays. So I'll put the link down below if you want to grab my little framework that I've built up, but personally I'm just going to copy it as I always do, put it into our SAS folder, and then we're ready to go. The way this actually works is, if you haven't used SAS before, I've got a master style sheet, which is just styles.scss, then all these other ones with an underscore below, before them. Generally SAS compilers know that these aren't ready to be compiled on their own, they're meant to be included or imported into some other kind of style sheet, which, as we can see here, we're importing the skeleton file, importing the base file, importing the bits file, and all those kind of things, so that all these compile into one nice compressed document, which saves bandwidth and means that you're only using one HTTP request when the user actually visits your website. So they're only downloading one style sheet, maybe styles.css instead of base.css, bits.css, which means the user would actually be requesting 10 HTTP requests. Again, if that didn't really make sense, there's a lot of information on that online and why that slows things down. You generally want to avoid as many HTTP requests as possible because it's kind of just like a conversation going on between the browser and the server. So other than that, our style sheet first of all is put in the skeleton, which is a basic kind of framework. You wrap everything in a container, which tells it that it should be a certain width at maximum. So I've set the base width to be 1000, I think it's 1100 pixels in this base width variable here, meaning that anything with inside of a container will never be bigger than 1100 pixels. And then that container is also what is used for our responsive web design in our media query file, which we'll go into in a couple of episodes. Other than that, it imports all the other basics, like our base, which again is just basic setups for our font sizing and our quotes and everything like that. Again, I didn't really want to use a framework, but for a video series that is meant to be aimed at intermediates, I'm guessing that most people kind of understand this kind of stuff. If you don't really understand all this basic CSS, then there's lots of other web series out there for basic CSS. This is really aimed at getting you started with Sass and just generally a quicker workflow. So other than that, I got my empty files, that bits, for example, any little bits of code that is repeated throughout the site a few times, maybe like social icon links or signatures or copyrights, they'll go in there. Media queries, again, that's just where all our responsive and media queries will go, depending on the size of the browser. So, you know, if you're aiming for an iPhone view or tablet view, you put those in here. Other than that, what I will always do then is drag the whole project into CodeKit. CodeKit is what I use to actually compress my Sass and compress JavaScript and minify our images and everything like that. So just grab the folder, drag it on, it's been added, and now we can see all our files. So even CodeKit knows that these files shouldn't be compiling directly, as they know that they're compiled directly by this file here. So at the moment we can see our CSS file is actually empty. If we actually tell CodeKit to do our first ever compile, thinks about it for a little bit, does it, and now in here we've got our style sheet, which is nicely compressed. So this style sheet is actually only free press command and I, 13 kilobytes for the whole CSS file, which has already got quite a bit in it just because it's a basic framework. Whereas all these, these alone, that's 9 kilobytes alone just for that one mixins file. If we look by here, all these add up to much higher than 13 kilobytes, but when you compress it down, we get it to that nice level. So again, in CodeKit, we'll be going on to it later, but you can compress images down. So at the moment, in this site mockup that we won't even put in live, but just an example I'll show you, if we press optimize on this, it thinks about it, it's going to compress it a little bit and should be able to save a little bit of bandwidth and overall disk space when it finishes compressing. CodeKit has compressed this 3.7 megabyte image down to 2.7 megabytes, which is saving us like 28% without any quality degradation at all. So it's still 100% the same quality. It just uses algorithms to crush it down to the file size, which, if you can imagine, that's just one image. Obviously you probably never put an image this big on your website, but if you do this for the tens of images that'll be on your website, and a very quick way to save a huge amount of bandwidth overall for all your visitors. So that's about it for roughly our quick file and structure and software setup. In the next episode we'll go on to setting up the basic header, footer and the actual homepage. So I'll see you there.